Act 2, Scene 1. If you're using this edition, the 7th edition, it's page 757, right-hand column. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I was confusing Northumberland with Gaunt for a moment. So where we left off, York was, how do I want to put this? Upbraiding Richard, censuring Richard, criticizing Richard for violating the laws of inheritance. Okay, in the speech that begins around line 186 and concludes 208. And Richard essentially sloughs it off, saying, think what you will, we're doing it. Okay? So York responds, I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to be by thy side. So he leaves. So we see Richard talking with Northumberland, Ross, Willoughby, and I think that's it. And Northumberland says, let me see here. Sorry, the king leaves, top of that page, and Northumberland says, let's back up and go to the beginning of that page. The Duke of Lancaster is dead. Ross, and living too. For now his son is Duke, right? Because of the laws of inheritance. Willoughby, well, barely in title, not in revenues. Not in revenues, why? The revenue comes from the title and from the lands. That is, his revenue, his earning, his upkeep, all comes from the lands. Okay? So when Willoughby says barely in title, not in revenues. Barely in title means he barely even has the title, because where is Bolingbroke? Somewhere else. He's not in England. Okay? Not in revenues, he gets nothing from his lands. Because Richard just said, I claim it all. Northumberland, richly in both, if justice had her right. He would be rich in title, and he would be rich in revenues. If, what's he mean? Justice had her right. If Richard didn't deny him his inheritance. If justice had what is right and appropriate to justice. Okay? Northumberland is saying something pretty dangerous there. Richard is what? Outside the bounds of justice. He is acting like, therefore, an outlaw. Okay? He is suggesting the king is not the law. There's something higher and above the king. Ross, my heart is great, but it must break with silence, ere it be disturbed, disburdened with a liberal tongue. That is, I'm really troubled, but I'm not going to be the first person to say it. Speak. Let him ne'er speak more that speaks thy words again to do thee harm. So, Willoughby, tends that thou would speak to the Duke of Hereford. Now, who's the Duke of Hereford? Bolingbroke, the new Lancaster. So, if you are going to speak to Bolingbroke, out with it boldly, man. That is, come on. Fess up. Say you. Northumberland. Now afore God, 'tis shame such wrongs are born in him a royal prince. That is Bolingbroke. And many more of noble blood in this declining land. Notice, Northumberland thinks what is happening in England. Just like old John of Gaunt said in his famous Shakespeare speech beginning lines 38 in Act 2, Scene 1, where he talks about this realm, this England, this demi-paradise, etc., is now what?
It's going downhill.
It's declining. Okay, anything that declines means at one point it was upright, it was straight, it was perfect. Any movement away from that is a declination. So, in him a royal prince and many more of noble blood in this declining land. It's not only Bolingbroke, Northumberland is saying, that needs to be worried or concerned. It's anybody of royal blood. The king is not himself, but basically led by flatterers. He's suggesting the king is not thinking correctly, which is why we have a 25th Amendment. They don't have a 25th Amendment. They don't have a mechanism for removing a king in 1399 or 1398. There was no mechanism for removing the king. You know how the king was removed? Death. Natural death. The king died, and a new king was installed. And what they will inform merely in hate against any of us all. That is, the flatterers to the king are doing what? Informing him in hate against anybody who opposes the king. So, we kind of think today, with our political situation, that it's new. It's not. What we see being played out in Washington, D.C. is played out in all kind of governments, in all times. You always have us, them going on. Okay? That will the king severely prosecute. What will the king severely prosecute? What they inform against us. Okay? So Northumberland is suggesting all those who are flattering the king are putting ideas in his mind to do what? To prosecute, to bring down the power of the government, the king, against us. Our lives, our children, our heirs. The commons hath he pilled with grievous taxes, and quite lost their hearts. The nobles, so who no longer apparently supports Richard, according to Ross, the commoners. The rich, that is, the nobles, hath he fined for ancient quarrels, and quite lost their hearts. So if Richard has lost, the commoners, let's use today's language, the middle class, and the nobles, the upper class, who supports him? It's not the poor, his flatterers. His large court that he talked about earlier. There's the difference between their political situation and our political situation. Okay? So, turn the page. They keep going on. Talking. Willoughby, 257. The king's grown bankrupt, like a broken man. He hath not money for these Irish wars, Ross says. His burden is taxations notwithstanding, but by the robbing of the banished duke. The only reason he has any funds at all for these Irish wars is because of Lancaster's deep pockets. Northumberland, his noble kinsman, that was Lancaster, most degenerate king. Degenerate. We only tend to use that word today in relation to, one's sexual proclivities. What does it literally mean? Generate means of one's origin, of one's family, of one's tribe. Degenerate, D always means out, away from, in opposition to. He is behaving unnaturally, inhumanly. Okay? So, Northumberland's kind of like, I better be careful what I say. Ross, be confident to speak, Northumberland. We three are but thyself, and speaking so, thy words are but as thoughts. Therefore, be bold. We three are but as thyself. Okay? Aristotle and Greek philosophers divided the human being, oh man, I haven't read this in a long time, see if I can remember it, into will Think in something like the intellect in the memory. I think those are the three. That is, there were three aspects of the human soul. So when Ross says, we three are but thyself, he's saying kind of like, we are acting all together as you. You can speak. We're merely other aspects of your soul. What's he really saying? Our lips are sealed. We're not going to tell anybody. Yeah, well, if you really want to be sure nobody else knows what you're thinking,
Don't tell them.
Don't tell anybody. So Northumberland says, all right, here's what I'm thinking. And it's not just what I'm thinking, correct? It's here's what I've done. I have from Port Le Blanc, a bay in Brittany, received intelligence that Harry, Duke of Hereford, Reynold, Lord Cobham, that late broke from the Duke of Exeter, his brother Archbishop, late of Canterbury, Sir Thomas Erpingham, Sir John Ramsden, Sir John Norbury, Sir Robert Waterton, and Francis Coit, all these well furnished by the Duke of Brittany, with 8 tall ships, 3,000 men of war, are making hither with all due expedience, and shortly mean to touch upon our northern shore. Okay? Northumberland, who is speaking, is an area of England. Northeast England. It's a pretty large area. It goes up to border Scotland, okay, and goes down to the Humber River. And it's got a fairly long coastline. When he says they're making for our northern shore, he's talking about my northern shore. Okay? This is the same area, by the way, that in 1588, part of the Spanish Armada planned to invade England from. Northumberland in 1588, the area was known for its Catholic sympathies, not Protestant. So, what does this really mean? 8 tall ships, 3,000 men, a whole bunch of nobles are getting ready to land on English soil from Brittany. Brittany is part of France. By any other terms, what would this be described?
An act of war.
Act of war. This is an invasion. Okay? What was part of the banishment against Bolingbroke? It's not can't ever. Not until 6 years. It's not even been a year. Okay? And shortly mean to touch our northern shore. Perhaps they had ere this, but that they stay the first departing of the king for Ireland. That is, and maybe they would have already landed, but they're holding off until what? The cat's away. Okay, till Richard goes across the Irish Sea to do his wars in Ireland. If then we shall shake off our slavish yoke, Richard is making slaves of us all. Imp out our drooping country's broken wing. Imping a wing, this is a term from falconry, is when you stuff additional feathers into a falcon's wing. For what purpose? It's not like you are what's the word I want? Not transforming. It's not really transplanting, but it's similar to. It's not like you're actually surgically implanting them into the falcon's wing. It's just you're taking feathers and sticking them in. They give additional lift. Okay? Redeem from broken pawn the blemished crown. Notice, the crown is no longer shiny. It's no longer gold. It's no longer pure. It has to be what? Redeemed from broken pawn. Pawn shops. Richard has metaphorically hawked the crown because he doesn't have enough money. It's like taking your wedding ring, giving it to a pawn shop, getting $150 back, or whatever amount. Don't let the other one know, and make high majesty look like itself. Away with me and post to Ravensburg. What does this speech imply? How can they make high majesty look like itself? How can they redeem the broken pawn from the broken pawn, the crown? Is everything that's said here designed to call Richard back from the Irish Wars and spiff him up, polish him up? Or is he suggesting something else? Is Northumberland suggesting without coming out and saying it? Is he thinking? Let me put it this way. Time for a new king. So, 2-2. The Queen comes in with Bushy and Badgett. Who are Bushy and Badgett? They're kind of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, if you're familiar with Hamlet. It doesn't matter which one you refer to. They're pretty much the same. What kind of people are they? What kind of men are they in the king's court? Flatterers. They just, yes, sir, whatever you want, sir. Great idea, sir. Beautiful. That's a wonderful painting, sir. Whatever the king wants. Right? So, the Queen says, I've got a premonition. Something's going to happen. Yet again, methinks some unborn sorrow ripe in fortune's womb is coming towards me, and my inward soul with nothing trembles. At something it grieves more than with parting from my lord the king. She's like, I got a bad feeling about his going to Ireland. Bushy, don't worry about it. Each substance of a grief hath 20 shadows, which shows like grief itself, but is not so. Nothing to worry about. Okay? The Queen responding, it may be so, line 29, but yet my inward soul persuades me it is otherwise. What's she really saying? There is something, it's kind of a popular conception or a popular idea, though in our day with sexual politics and all that kind of stuff, it's been discarded a little bit or disregarded a little bit. Bingo. I don't want to come out and say it. Women's intuition. Notice, you never hear about men's intuition. Why not? They don't have it. What is intuition?
Ability to see something that really hasn't happened yet, kind of.
Ability to see something that really hasn't happened yet.
It's like innate knowledge.
It's like a feeling.
Innate knowledge, a feeling. What is it not? Is it rational, as in reasoned out? No, it's not. It's definitely not. It can't be argued out. Okay? That's what she's trying to get across here. Notice, Bushy, Badgett, what are they doing? They're responding with reason, logic. Okay, guys, if you ever get married, take that back, you have a significant other. If she has a feeling about something, 34 years of marriage here, you'd be pretty damn smart to go with that feeling. Okay? So, they keep going back and forth. Green comes in. Green says, what? The banished, line 49. The banished Bolingbroke repeals himself, and with uplifted arms is safe arrived at Ravensburg. She had a bad feeling something was coming. She had a bad feeling some news was going to fall. She's the kind of person you want, operating your stock accounts before the big fall. Now God in heaven forbid. I knew it. 'Tis too true, and that is worse, says Green. It's not, in fact, just Bolingbroke. The Lord Northumberland, his son, young Harry Percy, the lords of Ross, Beaumont, and Willoughby, with all their powerful friends, are fled to him. So remember, Northumberland, 281, gives us the names of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of 7 dukes with their following knights. And now we get Northumberland, Harry Percy, the lords of Ross, Beaumont, and Willoughby. So he's got about a dozen dukes and their attendant knights and warriors flocking to him. What's this telling us? What's being set up? We're only at Act 2, Scene 2.
Civil War.
Yeah, we still got, nearly 3 whole acts to go. Okay. So, Duke of York comes in. We're going to skip a bit. Duke of York comes in. Again, who's the Duke of York? Brother to John of Lancaster. Okay. Uncle of the king. Uncle, for God's sake, the Queen says, speak comfortable words. What does she want him to say? Oh, have a seat. What does she mean by comfortable? Comforting. What does she mean by comforting? Does she want lying words? No. But what kind of news? Good news. Bring good news. She's not asking him, though, to lie to her, right? Because that wouldn't be good news. Should I do so, I should belie my thoughts. Well, if I was going to bring you comforting words, they wouldn't be honest. Comfort's in heaven. You want comfort? York is saying, you're not going to find it here. Real comfort. Not going to find it here. Seek it in heaven. And we are on the earth. This place, according to Sophocles, the end of Oedipus the King. Anybody remember how the play ends? What is said? Count no man blessed till what? He is dead. So count no one happy until they die. Why? Because life here is life. Most famous line of one of the most famous films of all time. Well, kind of being facetious there. Life is pain, Highness. Princess Bride, by the way. Don't read the novel. It's not nearly as good. The novel's horrible compared to the film. This is one of the few times when I think the film is so much better than the novel. Okay? So, comforts in heaven, we are on the earth, where nothing lives but crosses, cares, and grief. This is kind of like Thomas Hobbes's 17th century. Human life is poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Okay. Human life, poor, nasty, brutish, short. In other words, it's a bumper sticker. Life's a bitch. Okay? Your husband, notice he doesn't say the king. No. Your husband, he is gone to save far off. What's he gone to save? Ireland.
Instead of saving you.
Where should he be? Here. Whilst others come to make him lose at home. Now, has York said anything negative in this speech about Bolingbroke, about Northumberland, about Ross and Willoughby and all the others? Nope. Has he said anything negative about anybody? Yep. What's he done by going off to Ireland? He's left England defenseless. Okay? Here am I left to underprop his land. The Duke of York has been left kind of in a viceroy position. I'm going to go off and fight these battles. You take care of the problems at home. You're steward now. Okay? So, who, weak with age, cannot support myself. He's saying, I'm an old man. How am I supposed to fight these young whippersnappers? Now comes the sick hour that his surfeit made. Now shall he try his friends that flattered him. Try, prove, test. In Hamlet, you'll see when we get to it, Polonius tells his son Laertes in the series of Proverbs, just before Laertes leaves, he says, you know, the friends that you have, test them. And once you've tested them and proven them true, bind them to your soul with hoops of steel. But those you've not tested, don't trust them. Now shall he try his friends that flattered him. Now, all those flatterers, all those yes men, all the Badgetts and Bushies are going to have to what? Louder? Fight? What else? They're going to have to step up. They're going to have to step up to the plate and really show what kind of men they are. Okay? The serving man comes in. And the serving man says, my lord, your son was gone before I came. York, he was? Why? Now, who is Duke of York's son? Almeril. Who we will find out was what? Why was he a traitor? What did he do? He's the one that's possibly responsible for the death of Thomas Woodstock, D of G, Duke of Gloucester. Go all which way it will. In other words, what will be, will be. Or in the French, c'est la vie. That's life. The nobles, they are fled. The commons, they are cold. And will, I fear, revolt on Hefford's side. Okay? So, we're going to skip a bunch. Pick up with 2-3. The reason we're skipping a bunch is I'm trying to get this done today. Yes, the whole play. Don't think we will, but. So, pick up with 2-3, 41. So we see Bolingbroke. Bolingbroke's talking to Northumberland. They're in Gloucestershire, I should say. And Harry Percy comes in. Harry Percy is the one who, in the next play we're going to do, is nicknamed Hotspur. Okay? And Northumberland introduces Harry Percy to Bolingbroke. They talk a little bit, and Northumberland says to Harry Percy, line 40, then learn to know him now. Why? Because in the previous line, Percy says, I've never seen him before. Learn to know him now. This is the Duke. My gracious Lord, I tender you my service, such as it is, being tender, raw, and young. Harry Percy is telling us he is not the same age as Bolingbroke. You kind of get this impression that you've got Northumberland, one age, Bolingbroke, younger, Harry Percy, younger yet. In reality, Bolingbroke and Harry Percy are the same age. Okay? So, being tender, raw, and young, meaning I've not done much yet in terms of feats of martial valor, which elder days shall ripen and confirm to more approved service and desert. That is, but in my old age I will show, etc. Bolingbroke, I thank thee, gentle Percy. And be sure I count myself in nothing else so happy as in a soul remembering my good friends. And as my fortune ripens with thy love, it shall be still thy true love's recompense. All beautiful, wonderful, flowery language to say what? Stick by me, son, and you'll go a long way. Why? I will remember my friends. meaning preferment, money, position, power, prestige. Okay? So, next column, line 69. Barclay comes in. It's pronounced Barclay, not Berkeley, okay, in English. Similarly, when you have a one of these, it's pronounced Clark, which is why we have the name Clark. Right? So, Barclay comes in. My Lord of Hereford, my message is to you, Bolingbroke. My Lord, my answer is to Lancaster. I'm no longer Duke of Hereford. Call me by my right name. I am the Duke of Lancaster. What's he doing here? Louder. Asserting tradition, asserting inheritance, asserting power. Okay? The Duke of Lancaster, because of the size of his holdings, is one of the most powerful men in England, as is the Duke of Northumberland. Northumberland's a huge area. Okay? Lancaster, not quite as large, but Lancaster is royal. Northumberland, not necessarily. So, my answer is to Lancaster, and I am come to seek that name in England. Notice, and I am come to make Lancaster king. He doesn't say that. He says, I want my name back. And I must find that title in your tongue before I make reply to aught you say. So, start over. Call me by my right name, and then I'll reply to you. Mistake me not, my lord. 'Tis not my meaning to raise one title of your honor out. Raise as in to raise a building. Doesn't mean to build it up. It means to destroy it. I'm not meaning to. To you, my lord, I come. What lord you will. That is, whatever you want to be called. Makes no difference to me. From the most gracious regent of this land, the Duke of York. To know what pricked you on to take advantage of the absent time and fright our native peace with self-born arms. The Duke of York wants to know, why are you here? And why are you here armed? See, because when you land on the territory armed to the teeth with thousands of troops, it doesn't look good. If he'd come waving a white flag, that'd be better. Why? Doesn't mean you're coming as an act of war. But if you come bearing a white flag, what does that mean?
That you're not.
It means you surrender. Yeah. Okay. So, Bolingbroke comes, York comes in, Duke of York. And what does Bolingbroke do? Move pencil. I shall not need transport my words by you. That is, I don't need to speak to you to give my words to the Duke of York, because York has entered the scene. Here comes His Grace in person. Why does he call him His Grace? One, he's his uncle. Two, son of Edward III. But His Grace. He's not an archbishop. Or is he archbishop? I think somebody else is archbishop. He's the regent. He is ruling the kingdom in Richard's absence. Therefore, he has what? God's support. Okay? It's kind of like Richard went over to Ireland and placed God's support off of himself onto the king. Kind of like the transference of Elijah's mantle onto Elisha, if you're familiar with the Old Testament story. So, he kneels. Sign of respect, sign of obeisance. York, show me thy humble heart and not thy knee. Get up. Don't give me this false humility by kneeling to me. Show me thy humble heart. What does he mean? Demonstrate your real humility, whose duty is deceivable and false. What's the whose duty? The bending of your knee might not be honest, might not be sincere. Well, my gracious uncle, stop. Just stop right there. Grace me no grace. Don't call me Grace. Nor uncle. Me no uncle. Don't call me your uncle. Why not? He is his uncle. What does the Duke of York mean? He's saying, my relation to you is nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Why? Remainder of the speech. Because of your behavior. Because of your actions. I am no traitor's uncle. So you've called me uncle. I call you traitor. I'm not the uncle of a traitor. Why? Because nobody in my family would do that. I mean, because we're good people. And that word grace in an ungracious mouth is but profane. Why have those banished and forbidden legs dared once to touch a dust of England's earth? But then more why? But then more why means, if we were to write that in modern English, but then there were more whys. That one why begs or produces other whys. Why have they dared to march so many miles upon her peaceful bosom? See, he didn't just land in camp and said, send an emissary to Richard, get my land holdings, get my title back. Okay? No. They then proceeded to march. They marched from Ravensburg, and I said, let's see if I can check this real quickly. Yeah, okay. I thought Ravensburg, for some reason, I was thinking it was on the west coast, but it is on the east coast of England. So they marched from, if you're familiar with the map of England, Northumbria's up here, Scotland's up here, you got East Anglia, London's down here. So march from up here to Gloucestershire, which is southwest England. Not Cornwall. Cornwall sticks off like this, and you come up here, Liverpool's up here. Gloucester's down in this area. It's where Stonehenge, for example, is next to. Stonehenge is in Wiltshire, okay? So, you've traversed England, he says, with a troop of thousands of warriors, frightening her pale-faced villages with war and ostentation of despised arms. Comest thou because the anointed king is hence? Did you come because you knew the cat was away? Are you the mouse playing because the cat's not here? Is that what you've done? Why, foolish boy, the king is left behind, and in my loyal bosom lies his power. Don't you know? Richard might be away, but I'm here, and I have the full power and authority of the king. If the president is gone, away on a trip, and something happens to the president, what immediately happens? Something happens, the president dies. What immediately happens within an hour?
Someone's sworn in, the VP sworn in.
The vice president is sworn in. The moment JFK was pronounced dead, Lyndon Johnson became president. Okay? When Reagan underwent surgery after the assassination attempt, 25th Amendment came into play. Why? He wasn't able to fulfill the duties of the office. George Bush temporarily had the power of the presidency handed over to him. And then once Reagan came out, went back. So, and in my loyal bosom lies his power, were I but now the lord of such hot youth, as when brave Gaunt, thy father, and myself rescued the Black Prince, that young Mars of men, from forth the ranks of many thousand French. Oh, then how quickly should this arm of mine, now prisoner to the palsy, chastise thee and minister correction to thy fault. What's York saying? Let me back up. You're directing this play. Who do you pick to play York? Some young guy in his 30s? Or Sean Connery, who's like 80? Needs to be somebody like Sean Connery. Needs to be somebody old. I mean, I think at least. If we're going to get all specific about only certain kinds of people can play certain kinds of characters, then you need a really old white guy to play, okay, York. Because when he says this, what's he really saying? If I were like I was when I helped the Black Prince, damn it, I'd kick your from here back to Raven. That's what he means. His arm has the palsy. It shakes. He can't even hold the sword anymore. But if I could, son, you'd feel it. My gracious uncle, let me know my fault. What have I done? On what condition stands it, and wherein? Where have I gone wrong? Now, is this an honest, sincere question? Because some think it is, some think it isn't. Some think Bolingbroke is merely mouthing this. And he knows exactly what he's done wrong. Even in condition of the worst degree, in gross rebellion and detested treason. Worst degree, think of 0 in climbing. Well, the highest degree is the king. So the worst degree is the opposite of that. Here's your fault. Rebellion. You've marched with arms across the land. Imagine if the Tennessee National Guard armed up and rode in a convoy to D.C. Okay? And not because of the remnants of Hurricane Florence. Thou art a banished man. And here art come before the expiration of thy time in braving arms against thy sovereign. Has Bolingbroke and the others, marched from Ravensburg with signs and banners saying, down with Richard, boo is Richard? Have they openly proclaimed, we're going to overthrow? This is our march on Washington. Follow behind us. No, they haven't. Notice, Bolingbroke now stands up. He's been kneeling this whole time. Why does he stand up? If you go from a position of humility, kneeling, what is it when you stand up? You're reasserting some authority there. That means, you're taking what? You're taking a fighting stance. Not necessarily this kind of fighting stance, but he's now going to stand up kind of like an equal. As I was banished, Hereford. But as I come for Lancaster. And noble uncle. What's the noble uncle mean? Or how does he say it? I kind of gave away a little bit. I think he's being a little bit sarcastic there. I beseech your grace, look on my wrongs with an indifferent eye. That is, indifferent. What does that mean? Unbiased. Don't look at me as uncle. Don't look at me as king. That is, from the eyes of the king, from the power that you temporarily hold. You are my father, for methinks in you I see old Gaunt alive. Oh, then, my father, will you permit that I shall stand condemned, a wandering vagabond? My rights and royalties plucked from my arms perforce and given away to upstart thrifts? That is, if you looked with indifferent eye, you would say, that's not right. Shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have been denied all of his rights. Wherefore was I born? That is, what is my purpose for existence if it's not to inherit what is mine? If that my cousin be king in England, it must be granted. I am Duke of Lancaster. Why? Notice, he's using reason and logic. Why is his cousin king in England? Because he inherited the throne from his father. Therefore, I inherited my throne from my father. You have a son, Omeril, my noble cousin. Had you first died, guess what? He would now be. And had he been thus trod down, he should have found his uncle Gaunt a father to rouse his wrongs. He's just turned the tables. I would expect you to come to my defense, not to Richard's. I am denied to sue my livery here. That is to sue for my livery, my kind of my coat of arms, but it's the clothing I am entitled to, kind of like the uniform I am entitled to. Duke of Lancaster had certain emblems on their clothes. Remember the white rose? And yet my letters patents, they give me leave. My letters patents, I trace my line back, my genealogy, and they say I should be able to do this. My father's goods are all distrained and sold, and these and all are all amiss employed. They're not being used correctly. What would you have me do? I am a subject, and I challenge law. Challenge doesn't mean I oppose. He's saying, I appeal to the law. I am subject to the law. Therefore, I appeal to the law. Let the law decide. Attorneys are denied me. But he can't. Okay? What is this kind of an early representation of? This is kind of like taxation without representation. Okay? You get arrested. What does the Constitution guarantee you? What must, if you cannot provide for it yourself, what must the government provide at government expense? A lawyer. In an ideal world, a good lawyer. Okay? And therefore, personally, I lay my claim to my inheritance of free descent. And because I can't get any lawyers, I'm going to what? I'm going to represent myself. And that's why I'm here. The noble Duke hath been too much abused. Notice, Northumberland takes Bolingbroke's side. It stands your grace upon to do him right. Ross now kind of seconds the motion. Willoughby, base men by his endowments, are made great. My lords of England, York kind of realizes he's outnumbered here. Let me tell you this, I have had feeling of my cousin's wrongs and labored all I could to do him right. Yeah, I agree. He's been wronged. I've done everything I could. But in this kind to come, in this kind, in this way, in this fashion, in this manner, to appear, to come. Again, how did he come? How many did he say he had? 3,000 men of war. Okay? In braving arms to be his own carver and cut out his way to find out right with wrong. It may not be. And you that do abet him in this kind cherish rebellion and are rebels all. They're rebel to what? Richard? Yeah. But more importantly, what? The right. Justice, capital J. Okay? And ultimately, because where does the right and justice flow from, according to the dominant ideology of the day? God. You're rebelling against God's ordained order. Northumberland. The noble Duke has sworn his coming is but for his own. Now notice this. What is Lancaster here for? One thing. What's he want? His title and lands. That's it. That's all he's here for. That means, therefore, what? He's not here for the crown, the kingdom, anything else. We all have strongly sworn to give him aid, and let him never see joy that breaks that oath. We have all sworn an oath to what? help him retain his name. Okay? And one of the reasons for that is Northumberland realizes if the king can take Bolingbroke's name, Lancaster, and revenues from him, then what else? He can do it to his son. He can do it to him. So they're defending themselves. Okay? So, and let him never see joy that breaks that oath. So, how could they break that oath? Northumberland, Ross, Willoughby, et al. By not standing with Henry Bolingbroke, by not supporting him, how else could they break that oath? Because I think Shakespeare is implying this. Or, implying might be too strong. Might be in the back of Northumberland's mind. What's the oath? To do what? To get his land and titles back. So how else could they break that oath? Maybe if they go beyond that? Like to set him up as king? Because that's breaking that oath. The oath was, I'll go this far. But what if they go this far? Okay. York. I see the issue of these arms, I cannot mend it, I must needs confess, because my power is weak and all ill left. In other words, okay, whatever. I can't stop you. I'm too weak. But if I could, by him that gave me life, I would attach you all and make you stoop unto the sovereign mercy of the king. I would attach you all. That's like, I would have you bound and bring you to the presence of the king and put your face in the dirt in front of him and have you beg mercy. But since I can't, I remain as neuter. Neutral. Neuter has a different term for us today. Neutral. In other words, I'm not going to take the side of the king. I'm not going to take your side. I'm going to play Switzerland. You're going to do what you're going to do. The king's going to do what he's going to do. So fare you well. Now, fare you well, that's not being neutral. If you take those words literally, what do they mean? May all go as you hope for. Okay? It's like goodbye. What does goodbye literally mean? Where does it come from? God to be with you. That means may everything happen as you wish for it to happen. Okay? 2-4. We see the Earl of Salisbury, a Welsh captain. And actually, no, we'll skip that. Go to 3-1. We can skip that. Bolingbroke enters with others, and they have Bushy and Green as prisoners. Okay? Bring forth these men, Bushy and Green, I will not vex your souls, since presently your souls must part your bodies. That is, I'm not going to trouble you, I'm not going to puzzle your wills, I'm not going to confuse you. Why? Because you're about to die. With too much urging your pernicious lives, for 'twere no charity, yet to wash your blood from off my hands, here in the view of men, I will unfold some causes of your deaths. To wash your blood from off my hands. Kind of sounds like Pilate standing there and going, I'm not guilty of this man's blood. No, no, no. You guys who are killing him are guilty of him, are guilty of the blood. So how is he going to remove any possible guilt? To show the causes of your deaths. These are the causes. You have misled a prince, a royal king, a happy gentleman in blood and lineaments, by you unhappied and disfigured clean. You have in manner with your sinful hours made a divorce betwixt his queen and him, broke the possession of a royal bed. What is Bolingbroke suggesting?
Separated him from his wife.
Yeah, keep going though.
Maybe someone's gay.
That maybe Richard is gay. That you have gotten between, literally between him and his wife's marital bed. A happy gentleman in you got between his bed, and stained the beauty of a fair queen's cheeks with tears drawn from her eyes by your foul wrongs. Really? You made the queen cry, and that's worthy of capital punishment? Good thing we don't have that law today, right? I mean, you make Melania cry, who'd be hanging? A whole lot of people, okay? Probably including her husband. Tears drawn from her eyes by your foul wrongs. Myself, a prince by fortune of my birth, near to the king in blood and near in love, till you did make him misinterpret me. You made the king mistrust me. Have stooped my neck under your injuries and sighed my English breath in foreign clouds. He's saying, it's because of you that I was banished. Eating the bitter bread of banishment whilst you have fed upon my seigneuries, that is, all my properties, my land, rent, etc. Disparked my parks, felled my forest woods, from my own windows torn my household coat, his coat of arms, raised out my empress, leaving me, So because of all this, you are delivered over to execution and the hand of death. Okay, now for some people, those might all be good causes for them to die. What's the problem with his argument? What is Bolingbroke assuming unto himself?
Authority to execute.
Exactly. He's granted himself the roles of what? Prosecutor, judge, and jury. The Magna Carta is signed in 1215. That's almost 200 years before this. Okay. One of the things in Magna Carta, right to a jury of your peers. Where's their jury? Bushy, more welcome is the stroke of death to me than Bolingbroke to England. Green, my comfort is that heaven will take our souls and plague injustice with the pains of hell. Bolingbroke, shut up. Okay. So, skipping, yeah.
This is over 30 lines, the Bolingbroke.
Mhm.
Would that count as a
Speech
yeah
to do?
to
To bring
sign?
forth these men to execution in the hand of death? Yeah.
Yeah, that okay.
25, 26, 27, 28, 29. It's right at 30. Yep, that's fine. And it doesn't have to be exactly 30, okay? It can be 28. It can be 40 or 50 if you really want to go for it. Okay? So, 3-2. Richard comes in. And he's just gotten back from Ireland. He's just, stepped off the boat, seemingly. And what does he do? He bends down and kisses the ground. Dear earth, I do salute thee with my hand, though rebels wound thee with their horses' hoofs. And he gives us a big, long speech, And Carlyle says, in response, because the king is saying, that he hopes his kingdom lasts, etc., etc., fear not, my lord. The power that made you king hath power to keep you king in spite of all. Don't worry, O great and mighty king. God will come to your aid. Notice, that power that made you king hath power to keep you. Yeah. Does that necessarily, therefore, imply it will keep you? No. O'Merrill says, we are too remiss, whilst Bolingbroke through our security grows strong and great in substance and in power. The king says, it's okay. Don't you know that when the searching eye of heaven is hid behind the globe that lights the lower world, that's the sun, so the eye of heaven is behind that, then thieves and robbers range abroad unseen, and murders and an outrage boldly hear. But when from under this terrestrial ball he fires the proud tops of the eastern pond, when God looks over the sun and sees everything, then murders, treasons, and detested sins stand bare and naked. So when this thief, this traitor, Bolingbroke, who all this while hath revelled in the night, whilst we were wandering with the Antipodes. Notice what Richard is saying there. Here's the sun. Here's England. Here's Bolingbroke doing all of his stuff. Where was Richard? Okay, literally, he was over in Ireland. Richard is portraying himself as God here. Okay? Why? Because he wasn't in England seeing everything. He was blinded by the obscurance of the sun. But now, Richard is here and he sees Bolingbroke. He sees what he's doing. Now shall see us, Bolingbroke, shall see us rising in our throne the east. His treasons will sit blushing in his face. That is, when Bolingbroke comes into my presence, he will what? He will tremble and quake and fall down on his face, not able to endure the sight of day, but self-affrighted, trembling at his sin. Not all the water in the rough-rude sea can wash the balm off from an anointed king. What's the balm? It's the oil used in the anointing of the king. Okay. The king's anointing is done where? Today, let's say. Or 60 years ago when Queen Elizabeth was enthroned as queen.
Church.
Westminster Abbey. Who does it? Even though the queen is the quote-unquote head of the church. It's the Archbishop of Canterbury. Okay? And the very same language that is used to anoint a king is the very same language that is used in the chrismation and baptismal ceremonies. This person is marked out by God. And the Archbishop doesn't put, doesn't get like his finger and dip it in the oil and put E for England. No. They mark the king, the monarch, with the sign of the cross, meaning they are gods and they are God's representative, etc. Okay? This is what Richard is saying. All the water in the world's oceans, he says, can't wipe that off. I am God's chosen. For how long? Till I die. Naturally. Or in war. Real war, not civil war. I'm conquering other territories. So, the breath of worldly men cannot depose the deputy elected by the Lord. For every man that Bolingbroke hath pressed to lift shrewd steel against our golden crown, God for his Richard hath in heavenly pay a glorious angel. Yeah, but what might Richard be forgetting here? Just to throw a little wrinkle into his beautiful speech. Who's the greatest example, let's say, of God's quote-unquote anointed deputy? Yeah, Christ, okay? I mean, what does the very word Christ mean? Anointed. That's not his literal last name. Okay? It means anointed. And yet, when Christ goes up for the crucifixion, he's captured by the guards and stuff in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what does Peter do? Whips out a sword, cuts off a guy's ear. Jesus, put up your sword, man. Don't you know I can have a legion of angels right here, right now? Okay. Could is not does. Huge difference. So, just as God could protect Richard, doesn't mean he will protect Richard. Just as God could have stopped Christ from hanging on the cross, doesn't mean he did. Then, if angels fight, weak men must fall, for heaven still guards the right. This is the whole divine right idea of kings. So, Salisbury comes in. And they talk for a little bit. O'Merrill comes in. And Merrill says, why looks your grace so pale? Well, it's because of the word Salisbury just told to the king. And the king says, now the blood of 20,000 men did triumph in my face, and they are fled. I thought I had 20,000 men to support me, and they're gone. Until so much blood thither come again, have I not reason to look pale and dead? What is starting to dawn, to use his metaphor, on Richard? Yikes. Yeah, I'm screwed. What does he lack? He might have God's support.
Men to fight.
Yeah, but God's not down here. All souls that will be safe fly from my side. For time has set a blot upon my pride. You want to live? You better leave. O Merrill, comfort my liege. Remember who you are. This is like when Wheeloff in the Old English poem Beowulf. When Beowulf is fighting the dragon near the end of his life, and the dragon's winning. Wheeloff runs up to Beowulf and says, come on, Beowulf. Remember who you are. That's an old version of the modern day. Come on, suck it up. You're the world champion at this. And Beowulf kind of was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm Beowulf. Monster killer, you know. Remember who you are. I had forgot myself. Am I not king? Awake, thou coward of majesty, thou sleepest. Is not the king's name 20,000 names? Is not the king's name worth 20,000 men? No, because those 20,000 men have 20,000 swords, and the king has one. So when he goes on and says, arm my name, a puny subject strikes it, what's he doing? Come on, Richard, you have this. Come on, suck it up. You can do this. It's like if you've ever, when I used to run marathons, it's like getting in about mile 22, 23. Come on, you've done this, you've trained for this, you can do this. Yeah, you're going to die at the end, but you can do this, until then. Okay? I know my uncle York hath power enough to serve our turn. That is, York's still with us, and then Scroop comes in. And Scroop says, more health and happiness betide my liege than can my care-tuned tongue deliver him. I wish you health and happiness, but I'm not bringing you any. Mine ear is open and my heart prepared. The worst is worldly loss thou couldst unfold. Say, is my kingdom lost? 'Twas my care. That is, it was my responsibility. And what loss is it to be rid of care? But care also implies what? See, responsibility can be good. Newborn child, that's a good responsibility. It's not a care like he's talking about. What kind of care is he talking about? Or what kind of responsibility? The things that eat away at your mind. Bills, expenses, illness. Okay? He says, is it really a loss to give away depression? No, most people would say, if they're depressed, here, you take it. I would like to not have it anymore. Let me share. Strives Bolingbroke to be as great as we, greater he shall not be. If he serve God, we'll serve him too, and be his fellow so. Are our subjects revolted? Scroop, well, I'm glad to hear that you're taking this in such a good manner. Glad I am that your highness is so armed to bear the tidings of calamity. In other words, you sound like you're handling this well, so here's a heaping more. Like an unseasonable stormy day, which makes the silver rivers drown their shores as if the world rolled as off to tears, so high above his limit swells the rage of Bolingbroke. Covering your fearful land with hard, bright steel and hearts harder than steel. Covering. What is he saying about Bolingbroke's army? It grows and grows and grows and grows. Why? Does he have the magic black cauldron? Throws, dead people in and they come out? No. Its commoners are flocking to his banners and bringing what swords they have or what fighting implements they have: axes, picks, rakes, shovels, pitchforks. Whitebeards have armed their thin and hairless scalps against thy majesty. Boys with layman's voices strive to speak big and clap their female joints in stiff, unwieldy arms against thy crown. Female joints just means untried in war. Thy very beadsmen learn to bend their bows of double fatal yew against thy state. The English longbows were feared. Why? Because you could kill people hundreds of yards away. You don't have to get up in close quarter battle. Both young and old rebel, and all goes worse than I have power to tell. In other words, and I haven't even gotten warmed up. Too well, thou tell'st a tale so ill. Where is the Earl of Wiltshire? Where is Badget? Where is Bushy, Green, etc.? Yeah, Bolingbroke's made peace with them. They're dead.
Pieces.
Pardon?
Pieces.
They're dead. So, yeah. So, Almero, where's the Duke my father with his power? That is the Duke of York. Richard, no matter. It doesn't matter at this point. I'm so screwed. Of comfort no man speak. Let's talk of graves, of worms, and epitaphs. See, this is Richard's, to use the Greek fancy word. I think this is the right word. Anagnorisis, recognition scene. This is his, oops, I've not been a good king. I now see the wrongs that I have done. It's the beginning of that. Okay? Make dust our paper with rainy eyes, write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executors and talk of wills, and yet not blah, 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 blah. This is another a fairly long speech. It would make a great one for memorization. Okay? And he says in it, and let's tell sad stories, top of 766, line 156. And let's tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed. None had been deposed up to this point. Some slain in war, like the one who would have been king, his father, the Black Prince. Some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed. Who's he talking about? Okay, this is kind of English common verbal history, right? But it's not really England, it's Scotland. What's the play that should not be named? Macbeth. Okay? It's always called either by actors. The Scottish play, or as my son calls it, who's in the Nashville Shakespeare Festival, Knackers. Because according to tradition, you mention the play and bad luck happens. Okay? Macbeth. Why? Because Macbeth did what? He deposed Duncan. And then Macbeth dies, a horrible death. I don't have Macbeth on the syllabus because it's not one of my favorite plays. Even though my brothers traced our ancestry and we're related to Macbeth. Anyways, so some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives. Duncan's poisoned, Macbeth is poisoned by his wife. Some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown. That's the title of the BBC film series done of this tetralogy starring Tom Hiddleston as Henry V, Prince Hal. Has Jeremy Irons playing the part of Henry IV. He's fantastic. Ben Winshaw, if you're familiar with Ben Winshaw, plays Richard II. And he is perfect. Just perfect. I don't remember who plays Bolingbroke. Okay? Anyways, The hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court, and there the antic sits, scoffing his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath. Notice, the crown is doing this on the king, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, to act as king, be feared and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit. Infusing him with what? What is self and vain conceit? Pumped up ego. Thinking he is more than he is. Why? Because he wears a piece of tin on his head. As if this flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable. See, this is why your editor said, David Bevington said, man, Richard's good with words. I mean, he just creates these beautiful poetic images. And humored thus, comes at the last and with a little pin bores through his castle wall. And farewell, king. In other words, the castle wall is not impregnable. And what's the castle wall? The flesh, the body. It's not impregnable brass, right? Because with a little pin, you do what? Pop. It's more like a balloon. Because what is that thought of impregnability caused by? Yeah, I'm the king. They can't touch me until someone touches them. Cover your heads and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, he says. Why? Because you've been mistaken all this time. And yet, go back a little bit, and what did Richard do? He threw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty. How? He took away all of Bolingbroke's rights. In other words, let's use language from another Shakespeare play. He's been hoisted with his own petard. He caused this to happen. This is why I go back to Sophocles. This is why when Oedipus hears from the drunk first, you're a bastard. You're going to kill your father and sleep with your mother. Not me. He goes to the oracle in Delphi. Yep, that's true. You are going to kill your father and sleep with your mother. He does what? He doesn't want to kill his father, and he really doesn't want to sleep with mom. So he runs away from home. What did the what did the drunk not tell him? What did the oracle not tell him?
That he was adopted.
You're adopted. Because if he'd known he was adopted, then what? He's going to stay fat, dumb, and happy in Corinth. But he leaves Corinth, and in the process of leaving Corinth,
He kills his father.
kills his father on the roadway. Okay, so what two things, you're Oedipus, what two things, once you know the prophecy, do you absolutely never do?
Kill anyone, sleep with anyone.
You could say, kill anyone and sleep with anyone. Okay, so you become a celibate pacifist. Do you have to go that far? No. You don't kill whom? Okay, your father, but, your father's not walking around saying, I am your father. No, Oedipus, I am. It's not that. What do? You don't kill any man old enough to be your father. I don't know what age you want to say that is, but definitely 20 years or older. Let's just be really conservative. Don't kill any man 10 years or older than you. So before you do kill somebody, say, how old are you?
Before we duel, sir.
So before you, okay, and then, what do you obviously not do?
Sleep with anyone. Can be your mother.
Marry, it's not just sleep, marry any woman old enough to be your mother. So again, I'd be really conservative here. 10 years old. I don't know, maybe even more conservative than that. 8 years old. Okay? But he does. And he creates his own fate. Richard did the same thing. Richard created the monster that would devour him. You know, what do we always say about quote unquote presidential scandals? Has it almost always been the case? The scandal itself has never been all that bad. Watergate was a 2-bit or 2-get break-in. It was minor. What was the bad thing? The cover-up. Okay? I live with bread like you. That is, I need food to live. Like you, I feel want. That is, I feel the lack of stuff. I taste grief. I need friends. Read The Merchant of Venice. This is like Shylock telling Antonio, cut me, do I not bleed? Or cut us, talking about Jews, do I not bleed? Tickle me, do I not laugh? Is my blood not red? I'm human just like you are. Subjected thus, how can you say to me, I am... Richard's saying, what's the difference between me and you? We're both human. My Lord, wise men ne'er sit and wail their woes, but presently prevent the ways to wail. Notice, does Carlyle answer any of the questions? No. What does he say? Quit crying. Come on. Suck it up. Get up and go kick some you-know-what. Okay? What is Richard showing us here? Is he showing us his weakness? Because that's the way some people read it. This is Richard just, sitting down going, oh, boo, my life's so bad. Is that it? Or is this Richard finally, for the first time, seemingly, looking in the mirror? He is using some reason and logic. Because before he acted what? Nothing can touch me. Which is irrational. God will be my defense entirely. That's irrational. It's not necessarily unfaithful, but it's irrational. Okay? So, Scroop says, your uncle is joined with Bolingbroke. Kind of like last nail in the coffin. Richard, okay. Now what comfort do we have, boys? Line 205. By heaven, I'll hate him everlastingly that bids me of any comfort now. Don't talk to me of comfort. Okay? He does me double wrong, 215, that wounds me with the flatteries of his tongue. Now he's reached full recognition. Why? You guys are nothing but a bunch of yes men. If you had told me the truth from the beginning, I never would have what? I never would have taken Bolingbroke's lands. I never would have gone off in the Irish Wars. I never would have created such a big, fat, overblown court that wasted the government's money. This is kind of, I'm not saying he's literally doing this. This is kind of Richard saying, it's not actually my fault. It's your fault. You misled me. Yeah, but as Harry Truman famously said, the buck stops here. The final decision was the king's. The final decision is the president's. Okay? All right, we'll stop there. We will finish Richard III on Thursday, Richard II on Thursday.